welcome to Bean Encounter today, and we're doing this Bean Encounter. So here's the situation.
That's bad.
It's bad. It's going to get worse, okay? First of all, I'm thinking that it's a real Crimea, what Putin's doing, okay?
Well, Putin's got the West over a barrel.
What kind of barrel?
Oil, mainly.
Wait a minute. Crimea is not an oil-producing area.
No, but he's moved into there, and the West is totally powerless to do anything about it.
Why?
Well, the problem is that Russia only has two exports, oil and gas.
Okay.
And they go into Western Europe, and right now the Germans and the other Western European countries need that oil and gas.
Right, okay, yeah.
So they got themselves into a fine pickle.
Okay, so how are they going to get the gas? You know,
Well, the problem is they've created a situation by not having things such as the Canadian Keystone pipeline into the United States and other pipelines in North America.
How can you possibly have Keystone related to Crimea?
Well, it's
Okay.
really simple.
What?
Mr. Putin, unlike Western leaders, is actually quite an intelligent man.
All right, what did he do?
Well, he knows that the Western Europeans and the other countries need the oil that comes out of Russia, and they don't have alternative sources of supply because they were so careless as to give themselves no options.
Okay.
And how did they not give the options? They simply didn't build the Keystone pipeline, which if they built that, they would have had a very large supply of oil coming on stream that they could have brought into Western Europe from North America instead of getting it out of Russia.
Okay, then I'm not familiar with around that area who supplies oil. I mean, does China supply oil over there? Am I being naive?
China imports oil.
And imports it. So there's nobody who's really supplying that there except. What
Well,
about
the North Sea,
Indians?
the North Sea
Yeah.
supplies Western Europe,
Mhm.
but it's not enough.
Okay.
And Russia also supplies gas in there, as does the Ukraine.
Okay.
And we now have a situation where Mr. Putin can do whatever he wants because everyone is powerless to stop him.
Yeah, but he's not. I mean, do
Sure
you really
he is.
think? Do you really think he's going to invade the Ukraine? I don't think so.
He could take Ukraine, Belarus, he could take all of those countries back because there's nobody that's going to stop him.
He said that he wasn't going to do it.
It doesn't matter what he says.
It's almost scary because it reminds me of what happened with Hitler with the Olympics, and then after the Olympics, what is with us? You got these guys that make mega games, and then boom, go out there and invade everybody around.
Well, it's not so much the games that cause that. The reality is that Putin's a lot smarter than the leaders in the West. And if he's figured out strategically, he can do whatever he wants because they are powerless to stop him.
Okay, now there's an argument that Crimea was they wanted to be Russian anyhow.
Well, you take a look at that vote, and you realize anybody that wasn't Russian didn't vote, and weren't encouraged to do so.
Okay.
However, in Putin's favor, you have to understand Crimea was part of Russia prior to the Second World War, and it was only the Soviet Union, for some administrative reason, that separated the Crimea from Russia.
Huh.
So its history is as part of Russia.
Okay.
As much as the West may not like what he did, there is some validity. Furthermore, some of the statements he said about what's going on in the Ukraine are in fact true.
Right.
Unfortunately, the Ukraine's being run by thugs and by fascists and all kinds of other individuals that are unsavory. And this is also part of the reason perhaps why the West is being less than willing to come forward in dealing with, in terms of taking the Ukrainian side on.
But they have. The other issue too, of course, is
So
all the
in a
other.
very limited way, they didn't bring him to the NATO fold.
Well, the one thing is that the Ukraine gave up their nukes for this non-proliferation, whatever that treaty is.
Non-proliferation. You can't even
You try
speak
saying
like-
proliferation on the
Yeah.
line, okay?
You have some fun with that.
Yeah, I'm going to have some.
Say that quickly.
Proliferation, I can't. Forget it. Okay, so the question is this non-proliferation treaty, okay? What's the story on that? I mean, you know, obviously that's been broken, right? I mean, if Ukraine had nukes, Russia wouldn't have invaded.
Would you be willing as a Ukrainian leader to push that button?
No, because you'd be just dust.
Once you start that road, down that road, it doesn't matter. Nobody in terms of the major countries in the world, is going to push that button.
Yeah.
China won't push it, America won't push it, Russia won't push it, America,
Some
or France,
little,
England.
tiny little,
More in the category of terrorists
yeah.
and rogue states. If they get their hands on that kind of technology, they have people that don't care.
They would.
But the major countries, and including Ukraine, would never push that button.
Okay. Well, I think that might be fair to say.
So it's just as well they got rid of them because they're expensive to maintain.
Okay, well, so what about China? I mean, China has got the same kind of situation where they have places that belong to them, historically. So now that Russia's done this thing, could they not just go and do the same thing?
Well, the problem is what's historically belonged to them. Give me an example.
I figured you'd call me in on that.
Yeah, well, and the
Okay.
thing is, you might add to that Russia's on that list, because the Mongol empires, which were centered in China, went as far as the gates of Vienna. Does it give them the right to take over all the territory to the gates of Vienna?
No.
Well, I think it's a bit ridiculous when it comes to the position you're taking. All of northern India was originally under the power of the Mongols too.
Listen, I have you know that I have been noted to be able to take ridiculous positions and be completely...
Ridiculous to make a fool out of yourself.
Absolutely, that's what the whole thing is all about. Okay.
Mhm.
But seriously, there was talk about how if Russia got away with doing this, other countries would not honor their pacts with the nukes and stuff. There was talk about that.
There's always talk about these things, but
So-
it doesn't mean that it's credible.
So my question is, what do you think is the next move for Putin? What's he going to do? Take over the Ukraine, or is he going to back off, take his troops away, say, I was going to say Obama, you know what? You're right. Okay, I'm just going to back off from Crimea. We'll still have our...
He doesn't have to do anything.
Right.
The cards are all in his hand.
Okay, so what do you think is going to happen next? Let's just see. We're going to see what happens next. We're going to see if he's right or I'm right. Go ahead.
I think this whole thing will blow over.
Uh-huh.
Crimea will be part of Russia.
Yeah.
The realities are life for people in Crimea will be better than it was under the Ukraine.
Yeah, okay.
Not that I approve of what Mr. Putin did, but Crimea was probably under the control for the most part of organized crime, thugs and the likes. And I think that the life of people in Crimea will actually improve under the Russians.
Okay.
So
So that Crimea stays the way it is? Now, what do you think Obama's going to do? Lift the sanctions or something, or what?
well, there are no sanctions.
There are two sanctions. They knocked out some banking stuff with a high...
For a few people that are intimately involved with the government.
Right.
Big deal.
Well, big deal for those guys that are involved.
Not really.
No?
No, because the government of Russia can easily reimburse any losses.
True, yeah.
The losses are so trivial
Yeah.
that it's of no substance. It's more a gesture than substance.
So with all this posturing from Europe and from the Western nations, and what? It gives us absolutely nothing. I mean,
Absolutely nothing. He's got them over a barrel.
huh.
To come back to my opening remarks.
So, now on the next thing is, so you are in favor of the Keystone because Russia would never have taken over Crimea if the Keystone had been in place?
Well, the Europeans would have been in a position to put in more sanctions. And the other thing that has happened, and you can see the sheer folly of what has happened since 2008, is this was a golden opportunity to build infrastructure, pipelines, gasification plants, all of those kinds of things in North America. Nothing was done. We could have built gas pipelines to take the gas to the eastern ports of Canada. Liquid gas could have been pumped into ships and sent over to Europe. We don't have any of that infrastructure in place in Canada, the United States, and yet we have ample supplies of natural gas being produced on this continent and no way to take advantage of it. Same story with the oil. The pipelines, nobody bothered to build them from 2008 to 2014. As a matter of fact, the Keystone in the United States, which has the debate has absolutely no merit. They pumped more oil all over the sensitive territory over the last 50 to 100 years than the Keystone is likely ever to do. But somehow the Keystone all of a sudden is a new problem. So
I would think the Keystone is a lot safer than rail, but we did have that conversation at one point.
well, we did have that, but the
and you can see that on
Keystone,
an incubator site.
yeah. Well, if you look at the Keystone pipeline, and the debate. They've got all kinds of pipelines all over the sensitive area. They've got oil and gas that probably spilled from gas stations and everything else over the years, tanker trucks, everything all over this place. And the Keystone is being built with the latest technology to make it safe, whereas this other stuff wasn't. So I would say that the Keystone is a safe thing. I think you have to look at who's paying for the Keystone today. Who doesn't want to build it? I'm willing to bet you there's foreign oil money behind it.
Really? That's interesting.
And nobody comes clean. None of these environmental groups are coming clean as to where they're getting their money from. Why? Because if they did disclose it, I think you would find that there's a great big scam going on, and the public are being misled on a very large scale.
You've been watching Bean Encounter Views and News. If you have any comments about the show, feel free to send us in an email to info@incubate8or.com. We special thanks for video clips from bottledvideo.com.